Hello everyone, Emmerron here. So this week on How to GM, I wanted to talk about something that maybe I should have started this series with. And so I apologize for this advice being a little out of order. And I may add an addendum to the very first episode following this to kind of maybe suggest that this is good to watch as sort of a session zero, if you will. And so we will talk about session zeros themselves at some point here, either in a short or another entry in this series, maybe both. But today I want to talk about the products that any new Cyberpunk RED player, GMs included, may want to consider for their first experience into the game. Now, generally speaking, you're going to maybe want to get that core rulebook. The core rulebook, if you are dead set on purchasing an entry product, it is the one against which all others are based. So if you're using DLC or if you're using any of the supplements that have come out since, such as Tales from the Red, Black Chrome, and the soon to release Danger Gal dossier, we will have an expectation essentially that you have that core rulebook, because it's going to explain how the game works and how progression works, and all of those things kind of combine together with the understanding that those other supplements have. But I understand that there are going to be those of you who maybe do not have access to maybe the funds to buy a book. I know that the core rulebook is a little pricey. I believe last I checked, the physical book was anywhere between, I want to say, $35 to $50. And obviously that can be regionally priced. I'm in the US, so that's for me. Locally, it may be a little different, more or less. But that aside, there are a couple of options we have for enjoying the game in a sort of free to play, more trial fashion, right? So the very first product that, if you are uncertain about the game and you maybe don't have the money or desire to spend quite the money that you need to get a copy, digital or physical, of those core rules, I would recommend getting a copy of Cyberpunk RED Easy Mode. To you elitist gamers out there, this is not the journalist mode. This is a introduction to the game, and it's pretty comprehensive. I'm gonna pull it up here. It's 48 pages, cover to cover. And while not all of those are going to be material that you are going to read, the vast majority of it is. And I still would probably recommend, especially for a GM, going through it cover to cover. The reason for this is it's going to give you a pretty good understanding of the setting. It gives you a pretty basic understanding of the gangs, parts of the city. It's got a map. It's also got a gig at the back that you can run with your players called Getting Paid. And it also comes with pre-built characters. So you don't need to worry about your players feeling overwhelmed, that they need to have a character that they have built themselves, or that they need to worry about how to roll up a character. That can all come later. So if you and your players just want to get in on the ground level, try things out, this is the easiest way to do it. It is no money at all to pay for this. It is $0 on Drive to RPG, and it comes even with a little printable set of battle grids courtesy of Loki battle maps. And I have used some of those in Neon Inferno in the past. They are good battle maps, and they are just a couple of sections of some larger ones they do as part of their drive-thru RPG offerings. So I would definitely suggest this. It's a great way to kind of look into the game and start there. Now, once you've done this, the next step I would take, if you're still not sold on the game, is to go to the Artalsorian Games website. And in their website, there is a DLC section for their different games. And Cyberpunk RED gets a new DLC every single month. And right now, we're kind of catching up. April is always a weird one because they do a kind of goofy April Fool's DLC. But beyond that, every month, usually near the end of the month, we will get a fresh DLC that adds something to the game, whether that's new gear, new items, new cyberware. We'll get, you know, in one it was all new net running stuff, new drugs. And so these are some great tools in general when you get into the wider game. But for new players, there's one in particular I recommend, and that's Red Chrome Cargo. Red Chrome Cargo is essentially a mission that's meant to be given to new players and give you an understanding of like what a heist looks like. And so it's a lot of fun. I've run it a ton at my table. Whenever I want to show someone new the game for the first time, Red Chrome Cargo is usually one of the first gigs I look to run because it is very accessible. It's very simple. It's not going to have a whole lot of stakes, political double crossing, kind of Game of Thrones stuff. It's going to be more, hey, these guys have some stuff. I want their stuff. What's theirs is mine and I'm taking it. And you go onto the train, you take some stuff, and there's some shenanigans that ensue in between. So it's a great thing for new players because it doesn't require them to think too hard about the world or their place in it. And for GMs, it's a great place to start because the mooks are very easy. They're very simplified, very easy to kind of run. The only thing that they may not have in there are the stat blocks for them. So that may require you to invest in the core rules, but they also may have some mooks you could just supplement from the easy mode kit, because I'm sure they have to have some stat blocks in there because I haven't read it thoroughly. So you could substitute in some of those and just kind of reflavor things a little bit. You're given a couple of tools to kind of base your knowledge on in easy mode that you can maybe expand into that. And then, you know, now you'll have a really good, solid idea about what is and isn't, kind of in the game in terms of its feel, in terms of how it's run, in terms of how things resolve, in terms of combat skills and all of that. So you're going to have a pretty good pulse on that. So once you've made the decision at that point, because if you're watching this series, I will hope that you've joined us, and I will write off the assumption that if you have chosen that, first, welcome, but second, now's the time to get that core rule book, because for all the other stuff that's out there on offer, that is going to be the first thing that's going to give you a ton of information about what the game is in its bigger, more full fleshed out expanse, right? It's going to give you all your options for cyberware. It's going to tell you how characters progress. It's going to tell you kind of how mooks look, which are like what they call the enemies at the end of the book. It's going to give a couple of different variations of each, so that your players will have some variety, and you as a GM can kind of do replacement on them. I know in the upcoming Danger Gal dossier, we are going to be getting rules for actually building mooks. So without having obviously seen that book yet, or having the chance to review or read it, I might suggest that you get that one when it comes out if you're new, because it is going to give you a little more ability to customize things. But that not being on the table isn't really an issue. We do have some other options from here. So now that you have the core rules, you've decided you love this game, it's the best new tabletop game you've ever played. We're now going to talk about some of the premium supplements, because I highly recommend just going through, scrape the whole DLC page for our Telsorian Games, because now you've got access to all of that, and there is so much there. There's an unfathomable amount of stuff there. And this ranges from everything from harder enemies, if your players decide to build really powerful characters to play in your world, and I did do an earlier video on that, which you can check up here. The next thing I'd recommend looking at in there is some of the supplemental weapons and gear, which I believe they have sectioned out into its own category on the website. So that way you can kind of just go through it and kind of review that. There are a couple of mini games that if you feel like trying something a little different with your group, and really kind of going into the deep dive, you could try things like Elflines Online, which is an in-game MMO. It's awesome. Elflines Online, the TCG, which is goofy as hell, and I love it. And then there's the recently released Stickball. These are side activities, and they do require some kind of planning to run at your table. So it may not be the first thing that I would go for if I were me as a new GM. I, as an experienced GM of almost 3 years now, have yet to really dive into those and like pick them apart and figure out how they play. But they look like a lot of fun, and I definitely want to explore them in another video later. So what I would recommend is look at the gear, look at the cyberware, look at the drugs, any new items you can add to your game. That's just an expanded roster of stuff. Even the Black Chrome Plus DLC has some new gear that you could get. So once you're done scraping the DLC off of RTG for free, right? All of this free monthly stuff that's been released since 2020. Now let's talk about the premium supplements. So in premium world for Cyberpunk RED, we have a couple of things. So we've got the books Black Chrome, which is a further expanded gear and economy book for the game, which I actually, from recording a previous video, have right here. So this thing is awesome, especially if you're a player. But for a GM, this is going to give you a ton of options to like arm your mooks with stuff. It's going to give some neat treasure trophy stuff for you to drop in abandoned places for your players. It's just a great book overall. And the whole back section of this, for the last, I want to say 20 or 30 pages, is just pretty much a GM guide, giving you a couple of fixers you could include in your game that are important throughout the city. And it also gives you some maps for the night markets that these fixers run. It also has a full-fledged economy guide explaining how to use economy in your game. We did do a video about that last week, kind of discussing a little bit of that without the mechanical detail. Again, up here, you can look at that. There is also some explanation of what the lifestyles in the game are. And for players in a ongoing campaign, the lifestyle is incredibly important as an element for determining kind of how good your food is, but also what you can do and not have it come out of your pocket money that you're always carrying around. So it kind of helps relieve more of that bloat, right? So you're going to find all of that in Black Chrome. It is another book that is, I believe, let me check the back of this one. The price is $40 as per the back of this book. So this is the physical version. The digital ones are cheaper. I believe the digital version of Black Chrome is like, I want to say between 20 and 30 bucks. It is worth it, in my opinion, for the sheer amount of items and stuff you get in there. The economy in particular is probably one of the hardest things to master about the game. And it's one of those things that I struggled with for a really long time. Black Chrome was just released a couple months ago, so it's still very fresh. Like when I started my actual play Neon Inferno on the channel, we didn't have Black Chrome yet. We had maybe the tiniest inkling of stuff to come in the first week or two because Dice started doing his series of shorts on the topic, which again, if you're wanting to get an idea of what Black Chrome is, highly recommend looking at some of his shorts. I'm gonna link to maybe a couple of those below if I remember to, but they are a really great idea to kind of get a feel for, okay, these are what I can expect out of this book, and it'll tell you kind of whether you value that or not. If you're looking for more adventures to have with your players, there's a whole campaign in a book called Tales from the Red Street Stories. This is Tales from the Red Street Stories. So this is basically a campaign in a book. I am a player in a campaign that is currently running through this. They can be run as standalone gigs. So don't feel like, oh, Emmerron said I had to play this from cover to cover. You don't have to. And not all groups, I think, are gonna want to, but if you're new and you need something pre-written to base some of your creativity on when you start to homebrew and make your own stuff, this is a fantastic start. And I will give you an idea here, just kind of looking at the contents page, right? Each of these blocks, with the exception of this very last one, is going to be a different gig, right? So this very last one on the corner here is the only one that's not a new gig. Everything else is. And this is just your mooks, your defenses, your locations, and the biographies of some of the characters that appear in the book. So that way, when you as the GM are playing them, you have a good idea of like who they are and why they are the way they are, right? There is a supplement to this called, what was it? Tales from the Red Plus. So if you did want to expand it even further or just see some customized options, it's kind of like, I believe Artel Sorian described it as a collector's edition or director's cut kind of content that you'd add to it. It's free. It's one of the DLCs, so you don't pay extra for it. But it's a little more like the director cut or final cut of the content, where it adds a little extra to it. Now, I can't vouch for all of the gigs in there, because as I said, I'm still in a campaign that started up, I believe, oh gosh, when did we start? We started before the new year, running through it, because I believe the book itself came out in like September. So I think we've been running since about October playing the game, and we still aren't done yet. But we also have been a little slow. We haven't been running consistently every single week. And our GM is also one that likes to add personalized stuff in there, which I would highly recommend that you do the same. I think that customizing for your players is probably one of the best things about being a GM, because it lets you make those situations more personal for them, and it lets you really add a lot of flavor to the world that some of these might be lacking just a little bit, right? It's like adding seasoning to that microwave dinner you made, because we all live on pre-pack at some point, let's be honest. We play tabletop games. So now that we've talked about those, so as of recording this video in early June of 2023, those are the major books that the game has. So we've got the core rulebook, we've got Tales from the Red, we've got Black Chrome. These all cost about that, I believe, $30 to $40 price point range. Tales from the Red is, it's tiny. Oh, it's another $40. Yeah. So this is also a $40 book. So you're looking at 40 for this, 40 for Black Chrome, and 40 or 50 probably for the physical version of the core rulebook. Again, the digital versions of these are all cheaper, so you can get them that way and have it be a little more price effective. There's also a program that Artel Sorian encourages, I believe it's retailers to be part of. So they themselves directly for their web store don't do this. But if you have a local game store that sells Cyberpunk, you can encourage them to be part of something called the Bits and Mortar program if they aren't already. And if they are, what will happen is you go to that local game store, you buy your physical book through them, and they will give you a code to redeem online with Bricks and Mortar that will, or Bits and Mortar, excuse me, that will give you a PDF copy of the book for free. So it does incentivize going through your local game store. Unfortunately, I do not have many near me that deal in the book that are part of Bits and Mortar. So I buy both copies at full price. I am a rube who is just getting hosed. And that's fine. You know, I am happy to give RTGL my money. I have no problem with this. But it isn't the most cost effective. So I highly recommend that if you are planning on getting physical copies of the book, you see if a Bits and Mortar store is nearby so that you can order through them. Now, let's talk about the other premium supplements that exist for the game, because there are a few, and they maybe aren't as comprehensive as some of the other things we've discussed up to this point, but they do have some benefit as a GM. So one of these things, and probably the first thing that I would be getting if it were a thing that I was interested in spending some money, but maybe I didn't want some of these other big flashy things. I wanted to buy something a little cheaper, would be the data pack. Now, the data pack is it's a mix of a couple things. So the first thing it is a guide of several Roll20 lists of things within the city. There's people that you might run into on the subway. There are safe houses within the city. There are places like nightlife throughout the city. I believe there's one, it's like 20 things you might find in a dead mook's subdermal pocket. So there's some fun stuff. There's some creative stuff. There's a lot of flavor in there. And I think most critically for new GMs, it's got a couple of maps that come with it. And it also for the physical edition, right? And I believe the digital edition has them available for print as well. So again, you're not getting hosed by getting the digital version of this. You just might have to go out of your way to then print the maps if that is what you want to get. So within that as well, there are some gigs that you can run. So I believe in the book, it's got 4 additional gigs. And at the back of the core rulebook, there are 3 or 4 as well. So if you get the core rulebook in this, you've already got like 8 gigs, 7 or 8 gigs. Add to that, the Red Chrome cargo from the website and the getting paid from the free DLC. And you've got as many gigs as come in Tales from the Red. Now, they're not as neatly organized as like a campaign maybe. But if you're just interested in getting a whole lot of different stuff that has a variety of different inspiration and gig ideas, you could do worse than that, right? So as far as premium content for the game goes, that's probably the most critical one for GMs. There is another thing you could consider getting, which is the net running deck. It isn't necessary. So I do want to state that right up front. It is not necessary that you get this net running deck, but if you play around a table physically with people and you like to visually outline on the table for a net runner in your party what a net architecture looks like in the game, you can lay these cards out and it's a great physical representation of a network, right? And it is a pretty good deal. I believe that the cards only cost about $7 or $8. So it's a little box you get, a deck of cards, and there's an instruction sheet for using it for free on their website. So you can kind of get a sense for what it is before you even buy it. It is more for physical. The one tool, so now that we've talked about physical stuff, right, that has some digital companions, but mostly it's physical stuff. Let's, for the last kind of thing here, talk about some digital stuff. So one of the things that I highly recommend, so you've got this thing called the Cyberpunk RED companion app. So there is a little red companion, and I'll see if I can find a clip of the icon that I can put up in the video here. But what it is a companion app that lets you roll new characters. If you are a GM, it has a couple of tools in there, like an initiative tracker, that if you are, again, playing around a table, or even if you're playing like Theater of the Mind in a Discord, it is a really solid suite of tools to have. Most of them are free. There are some premium features though in the app. If you are willing to spend a little bit of extra money, I would say it is highly worth it. I believe for the base premium cost to just unlock some of the extra tools available in the app, you're looking at about, I think it's $5, $3 or $5 for that. And I know Black Chrome just came out as an additional premium purchase in there, and that is also $5. So you're talking at most, I believe it's $10 currently to fully unlock that app, and that's a one-time purchase. It's not monthly. So you buy it and then you're good. And it is probably one of the best tabletop gaming apps I have ever used on a mobile phone. I've heard people who have experience with D&D's suite of tools say that it beats them out. And it was put together by a fan. And then RTG just gave their blessing, like, here, make it happen. We're happy to support this. And it's been really cool. So that said, that'd probably be the other thing. Now, in closing some of this video, you all might be screaming at your screens right now. You're going to say, Emmerron, why haven't you mentioned the JUMPSTART kit? That's a box set. Surely that must be a fantastic introduction to Cyberpunk RED. Like, it's a starter set. Why wouldn't you recommend that, Emmerron? And I'll explain why. So, at last I checked, I believe the JUMPSTART kit, if you can find a physical copy, is about $30. It might be between 20 and 30. And it was a beta version of the game, right? So it is not the core rules we use today, which is why I recommend easy mode over it if you're just starting out. Because if you start with the JUMPSTART kit as your first product, you're going to be really confused when the core rules eventually come into your possession. And it's not free. It is a price to pay, and it's a price to pay for stuff that is no longer accurate, right? So as a product, it's hard to recommend. The one case I will recommend for it, though, is it does come with some extra battle maps. So if you do manage to get your hands on the physical copy, those are pre-printed for you. Again, there are digital format versions of it available. They do have some maps that you can print. These are good, you know, on one level. It also comes with a couple of bonus gigs. Now, again, they are not written with the core rules or balance in mind that eventually did come out, because I believe the JUMPSTART kit predates the core rules by about 2 years. So, grain of salt with everything in there, it is going to be dated. The good news is that for the gigs, they did make a conversion guide. And so for a new GM, it might be a little counterintuitive, but if you made the mistake and you bought that and you aren't sure what to do with it, get yourself the core rules when you're comfortable and get the conversion guide, and all of the gigs in there now will make a little more sense. You just might need to amend a couple of the things because they don't run the same as they did in the JUMPSTART kit, just because of how rules and balance have changed in the core book. So with all of that said, that would be my comprehensive guide to getting started as a new GM and what to buy. If you have any questions or want to clarify anything, as usual, this will be going up not only here on YouTube, but I will also post it over in the Reddit. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions or clarify any other points that I've made in the video. Would also love to hear what your experience getting started in Cyberpunk was like, or if you are new and you're just running some things for the first time, I'd love to hear stories as you get into it and experience it with your players for the first time. It's a wonderful hobby. As I say in all of these videos, it is a fantastic thing that I enjoy quite a lot. So that'll do it for us this week. Again, my name is Emmerron. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Stay healthy, stay safe, and until next time, we'll see you on the streets of Night City. Peace.